When you are a company that's become the best-selling smartphone brand in a country as big as India, then you have to admit that you are kind of a big deal, especially when your market share is around 30%. Double that with the fact that you have also become the number one player in smart TVs apart from some other product categories, then it must be acknowledged, right? Of course, I'm talking about Xiaomi in India. Xiaomi is hugely popular in India. On the back of its Redmi brand of smartphones, it has become the number one player in smartphones, smart TVs, power banks, and even some other product categories. But they've got a little bit of a problem out here. People love Xiaomi products because they are great quality but also very affordable. They're not viewed to be really aspirational like an Apple iPhone. They're not viewed to be cutting edge like a Samsung. That's the problem that Xiaomi is grappling with, which kind of mirrors Maruti Suzuki's problems in India, because it was always the number one car manufacturer in India, but it struggled to sell an expensive car. For example, the Kizashi, that never really sold. It was a great car, but everyone went ahead and bought Elantras or Honda Cities or something like that. And that's pretty much the problem that Xiaomi has been facing in India for the last couple of years. So much so that when they launched, the Mi 3 actually worked really well because that was their first phone, but its successor, the Mi 4, and its successor, the Mi 5, kind of flattered to deceive. Even the Mi Mix 2 did not do too well. And all this while, Xiaomi, even though it has been deserving of a conversation, of a seat on the table of the top tier elite premium smartphone manufacturers in India like Samsung, Apple, and now even OnePlus, it's never really managed to break in. In fact, it struggled so much that after the Mi Mix 2, it stopped selling its Mi branded smartphones in India. That was up until now. The Mi 10, its 10th generation flagship phone. This phone is innately cutting edge. Tells you why Xiaomi was partially responsible for kickstarting the entire bezel-less phone trend. And after testing this phone for the last couple of weeks, I am pleasantly surprised. If anything, I'm a little shocked as to how good this phone is. And without even getting into the review, I can say this much: this phone and Xiaomi do deserve a seat on the table alongside Apple, Samsung, and OnePlus. And maybe this could be one of the best Android smartphones or phones of the year. Now, all of this hoopla around the Mi 10 starts with its fit and finish and the way it looks. And if you look at this phone, it looks really well built. It's really premium. It's got this curved glass design, which is kind of a hallmark of top tier Android smartphones, in-display fingerprint scanner, and a lots of whiz-bang tech crammed into this frame. And generally, just based on its looks, it's kind of a love child between what a OnePlus would do from the front and what a Huawei would do from the back, especially when you kind of look at this gradient color, which is admittedly a bit of a fingerprint magnet, but looks oh so good. Also, this linear camera array for the quad cameras on this phone, and this phone is all about the camera, kind of like Huawei's phones. And on this front, kind of looks similar to the OnePlus 7T Pro or the new OnePlus 8 Pro, now that you even get a hole punch notch. And by the way, this display is so gorgeous, so gorgeous. This screen is so beautiful that it's got a brightness level that goes right all the way up to 1100 nits. Without getting into technicalities of this stuff, that's really bright. Even if you're out there in the searing sun of Delhi, this phone will be able to view great quality Netflix videos and you're going to be really happy. Obviously, this phone is also a high refresh rate panel, so everything becomes really smooth because it's got a 90 Hz refresh rate. Sure, it's just full HD, but it looks so good. Such vivid colors, Such great dynamic range of this panel, great viewing angles, also so good for viewing text. Overall, it's just a smashing display, which also supports HDR10, by the way. And this display is coupled with stereo speakers, and these speakers are really impressive. And one of the reasons these speakers are so impressive is that you get even sized drivers on both sides, which is not true with most smartphones. And so you get a really nice sound stage, a really balanced one, coupled with the fact that the general quality of audio is really good. Doesn't get overly shrill, you get a lot of bass also, and generally if you're going to just use this phone as your portable boombox and just blast YouTube videos on this, you can make do. It's actually really impressive that Xiaomi is able to do all of this in a pretty slender package, admittedly a little chunky, but that chunk also makes you feel that this is a really well built smartphone. Compare it to a OnePlus 8 or a Galaxy S20 Plus, then this phone will feel innately more substantial, and at the same time you will feel way more reassured. The one thing that this phone does not have though is water and dust resistance, which I feel is a bit of a miss, because that's what you expect of an expensive smartphone. Though for good measure, Xiaomi does add P2I certification, which is basic levels of splash resistance. So good on them for that, bad on them for not adding IP water and dust resistance. I would have really liked that. But aside from that, you must also say that this phone is totally packed to the rafters. It's a tech whiz-bang marvel. So you get the latest Qualcomm processor, the Snapdragon 865. Technically this phone can also support 5G, but we all know there's no 5G in India. So that's kind of mood. Coupled with 8GB of DDR5 RAM, the fastest RAM that you can get, and 128GB of UFS 3.0 storage, the fastest storage that you can get. It's great, but a measure of a phone's real quality is how it really performs during gaming and how well it can process really high resolution photos. And trust me, this phone is all about high resolution photos. Well, on top of that, you also get a really big battery, a 4780 mAh battery, which by the way can be charged at the speed of 30 watts via a USB Type-C cable and also wirelessly, because Xiaomi makes a really nice, really cool 30-watt wireless charger, which is basically the fastest wireless charging system we have seen yet in India. But just going back to the gaming performance, this phone is really good. If you're going to be playing a lot of Call of Duty Mobile, which has kind of become my latest addiction, not really, but a little bit, maybe, I don't know. That game really performs well. You get graphics which are kind of in the era of the PlayStation 3, almost PS3 like graphics, early PS3 graphics, but you do get that level. Very few frame rate drops, very rare, like it was already kind of minuscule, but now you really can't notice them frame rate drops, and you can play those games at really high quality, and the phone at the same time does not get too warm, and that's because of a very unique cooling system. They've got a vapor chamber in this phone which really helps, and they've got a layer of graphite. They're doing lots of stuff out on this phone which will help with the cooling. And on top of that, when you start shooting photos from its 108 megapixel camera, then it will process photos pretty quickly. Particularly what's impressive is night mode, because night mode usually takes a couple of seconds. On this phone it's almost instantaneous, and you really get a dramatic difference in night mode photos. So that's pretty impressive. On top of this, you get a great battery, because Xiaomi is known to aggressively manage battery via MIUI. On top of that, you get this huge size. Basically, if you're going to be clicking a lot of photos, you're going to be shooting 8K video, 4K video, or 1080p video, whatever, you are going to not run out of juice from this phone. This phone is going to be your best friend that way. And in the case you do run out of juice, you can really top it up really quickly within 90 minutes using a wired connection or using Xiaomi's wireless charger, which is sold separately, but it is very affordable and is also pretty kick-ass for other phones. If you have other phones which have wireless charging, it will charge them also pretty quickly. Not as quickly as this phone, but it will work pretty well. And that's kind of unlike the walk charging system on the OnePlus series of phones, because they kind of use a proprietary system, so they don't play really well with other phones apart from their own phones, which is kind of fair, but kind of defeats the point of having a separate wireless charger. Maybe that's my opinion though. And talking about the battery management, which is actually happening a lot through Mi UI, the overall Mi UI interface is also slightly revamped on this phone. The thing about Xiaomi's phones is the reason they are really affordable is because the company is running ads on Mi UI. Now, because they want to be known as a premium smartphone brand, they're selling a really elite top tier smartphone, they are saying that they are not running ads on this phone. But that's kind of counter to what I found out. So when you set up this phone, you will still have the ad selections turned on, which is kind of naughty on Xiaomi's part, but it is happening, but you can manually disable it. But the funky part about that is after 90 days it will be turned on again, so you'll need to keep going back and turn it off. And then there are lots of apps, even though Xiaomi has kind of controlled that behavior of adding a lot of bloatware, but you still get quite a bit of bloatware on this phone, which is a little irritating. And even stuff like Get Apps, which is Xiaomi's own Android store for applications, is throwing notifications which are basically ads. Xiaomi will obviously say that those are notifications, those are not ads, but hey, those are ads. Yes, but you can disable them manually. You have to go into the notification settings and say just don't give me notifications for this kind of stuff. And so you need to know your way around Mi UI or general Android mechanics to kind of control this behavior, and if you can, then this phone is going to be a delight to use. It's going to be pretty fast, very fast, amongst the fastest actually, and it's very customizable. You can download themes. I've downloaded a couple of themes out here. You can change the icons. These are not the stock icons that Mi UI come with. This is what I like. I like that pixel-like setup. You can remove that Xiaomi side shelf-like mechanism, so I've removed that. I've actually downloaded Poco Launcher on this phone, which is also a launcher by Xiaomi essentially, and that works really well. And overall, it works really swimmingly. But I must say that with phones which have similar specs, the performance is slightly, at least in terms of day-to-day usage, it doesn't feel as rapid, as fast, even though this is also crazy fast. It's like I'm talking about the really marginal gains out here, but yes, that is there. To the trained eye, particularly like mine, you do tend to notice these things. But overall, Mi UI is great. You are on Android 10, it will get Mi UI 12 pretty soon, so that's going to be another big update. We'll add another set of cool features. So from that perspective, it's actually a pretty great software stack. It's just that naughty behavior with the ads, maybe Xiaomi? No. The one thing that's not really naughty about this phone is its camera. It's insane 108 megapixel camera. Sure, you get 4 cameras out here, ultra wide camera, macro lens, depth sensor, but seriously, it's all about the 108 megapixel camera system with its huge sensor. Now what they're doing out here is using that 108 megapixel camera and that big sensor to actually shoot photos at 25, 26, 27 megapixels, essentially, using a technique called oversampling that was first introduced with the Nokia 808 PureView 808. Well, using that technique, what they're doing is combining pixels adjoining each other to create a super pixel, which will pull more light in, more detail, more depth, but reducing the overall resolution of the photo to 25, 26 megapixel instead of 108 megapixels. And you know what? 25 megapixels is a lot. It's bigger than surroundings, you know. It's really, really huge. And it also allows one to crop into photos, leaving even more headroom because this phone doesn't get a telephoto zoom lens camera. That's alright because you can do a lot of lossless zoom on this phone because of this incredible resolution, and overall the photos are just drop dead gorgeous. I would say this is the best still camera phone I've tested in 2020. Wait, let me go back to 2019. Basically the best camera phone since a very long time. And at the same time, this phone is killer at video. It can shoot 8K video. Maybe you don't want to use 8K video. Then it can shoot 4K video at 60 frames per second. Maybe you don't want to even do that, but it'll really do an incredible job of doing it. It can shoot great 1080p video. That's what most of us actually need for social media or anything. So I actually went ahead and recorded a full DJ set at 1080p 30 frames per second because that's good enough. And the phone did it for 60 minutes because it was kind of an Instagram live, but it did not heat up. It handled it beautifully. And that's something I can't say about any Android phone, period. Only the other phone that can handle this kind of video chops is the iPhone, the 11 Pro, or even maybe the new SE. Those phones handle video really well, and now for the first time there's an Android smartphone out there which can go toe to toe with the iPhones in video, and that's the brilliance of this phone. Apart from that, sure, decent wide angle photos, but really you would not want to use the wide angle camera when the primary lens is so bloody good. At the same time, depth sensor, again, sure, you can go for insane levels of bokeh, great edge detection and all of that, but this phone has got such natural, beautiful bokeh because of the sensor size. And really, that macro lens is kind of useless, 2 megapixels. Who needs 2 megapixels? They could have done without it. They could have done a macro mode using the wide angle camera. I don't know why that lens exists, maybe for marketing purposes or what. But overall, this is just a great camera phone. And by the way, this front-facing selfie camera is also not too bad. It takes really nice selfies, great portrait mode with single lens, and overall good colors, great resolution. Basically, best camera smartphone in Android land. Period. And I'm shocked because of it, because this 108 megapixel sensor was actually made by Samsung, and it was used on the Galaxy S20 Ultra and even on the Moto Edge Plus. But compared to this phone, those phones really look average because this just dazzles. And really, I need to tip my hat to Xiaomi for making this camera phone because it's that good. As someone who does a lot of mobile photography, this has now become my favorite camera phone. And obviously they've got a suite of editing features also on Mi UI which works really well. So that's basically the gist of it. This is overall probably the best Android smartphone in India right now. It's one of the fastest, it's got easily the best camera, it looks the part, it's built like a tank. You could say its software is also pretty smooth, apart from a few naughty things. Niggles like that ag nonsense that Xiaomi does at this 50,000 rupee price point, that's unacceptable. At the same time, no water and dust resistance for such an expensive phone. Maybe they could have added that. Thankfully, this phone does get P2i certification. But if you really know your way around Android like I do, you are going to love this phone. And even if that's not the case, if you're a shutterbug, you're going to love this phone. If you need a premium smartphone with a killer battery, then again you're going to love this phone. And if looks and the display is all that you care about, again, this phone is going to be worth kissing.